Okay, let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Snaggin Night Live. It is Thursday, July 10th. I hope everybody has had a fantastic week. I am going to slow down so I don't stumble over my own words. Welcome in, everybody. I think Hog and Sandy Toes are still going a little bit, but I appreciate y'all coming in this evening. We have a guest with us this evening, and we're gonna do a little bit of talking about bumping discussion, because I know that's something that I know Sean has talked about, and so he wants to do that on the James River, and we will be doing that. It's too darn hot here, says Jeep. We will be bumping on the James River soon, but I think the water is a little high right now with all this rain we've been getting, so we're gonna see what it takes us. Hopefully everything's calms down, levels out for a few days next week, and we'll be okay for the tournament coming up next Saturday for the live LFTL, Live Fishing Tournament League. So I want to thank everybody for coming in already this evening. Hope everybody's had a wonderful week. Looking forward to a great weekend. If our guest is ready, thumbs up. All right, here we go. We got Anthony from Yak Shore. What's going on, Yak?
What is up? How is everybody?
Oh, like I said before, nothing's changed. I'm still tired.
Well, it's not the same situation here. It is still, according to everybody I talked to that bumps on the regular down here, still a little early. Obviously, you get it before spawn, with the fish still trying to finish up spawn. It's hit or miss. There's some fish there. Brandon and Bob were competing in the live fishing tournament league for that chicken tournament. They did bump a 50-pounder. I mean, they're there. Some of them are there. It's just not as it's not the go-to technique at the moment.
Right. Yeah, I know. Like I said, I want to bump, but I don't know that I have the right trolling motor for that, because I got to constantly use my steering wheel to direct my trolling motor. Sean's boat is going to be perfect for when we decide to do it. We just haven't. I think with the lack of knowledge, I've been bumping once, and that was with Bobcat 2 years ago. So,
well, surprise, Bob taught me how to bump too. He out of all the people I've met in person, he was the first one I met that did bumping on the regular. I believe he told me he learned it from Steve Douglas. Obviously, it's a very prominent technique on the Mississippi River. But yeah, he does it here, and he has a lot of success with it. It's actually quite amazing.
Nice. Couple things. How's the angle of my camera? I moved it to my taller monitor.
If you're worried about eyeglass glare, it's fantastic. It's not having any glare there. Your head's about the right height. If there's any complaint at all, it's that your beautiful light they have in the background is not on right now.
Yeah, I think either the power supply burnt out or something happened. I've got to get that fixed. But at least I like to have that in the background anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
I need to move the plaques over there, but it is what it is. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because it's either this angle or I put it where I'm staring. Like, I used my big monitor, so I'm always staring at my big monitor for everything. And so I'm either looking above my camera or below my camera. I'm never looking directly at my camera.
Hi. Sure.
So, anywho, just wanted to make sure that was a okay angle. But let's actually real quick. I didn't do a short or anything on this, but I just wanted to do a quick mail call. I got an email the other day that my Fat Boy rigs that I ordered had shipped, and I didn't order any Fat Boy rigs. So
nice. Well, make yourself full screen.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. I was in Kevin's live when he was doing a live, not this last one, the one before that. And he was talking about the different rigs that he makes, and of course my favorite's the flasher. That's not going to change. But he said something about the Steelers rig. I said, you know what, you can get rid of that one and make a Broncos rig. That'd be a better rig. So I don't think I said it in those words, but that's what I felt in my heart. So he's like, a Broncos rig, I can do that. And so he put together a Broncos rig, and of course, I don't think he was going to sell it, so he sent it to me.
Very nice.
So I've got a Fat Boys Broncos rig, the one and only, orange and blue. Got a blue bead, orange rattle, orange float, and then of course I believe that's the Fat Boy Rigs 10-aught circle hook.
Now remind me, what pound test is that made out of?
I want to say 80.
So ideally, you could technically use it for bumping.
Correct. And I may save this one for the when Sean and I do go bumping. So that one. And then, just because Kevin's an awesome person, he also threw in another one with one of the big floats on it. Not sure what the name of this one is. But he was nice enough just to send me 2 Fat Boy rigs unsolicited. So I really appreciate Kevin for that. But shout out to, Fat Boy Rigs. Go to fatboyrigs.com, or you can go to F.O.A. You can either use TSW10 or you can use
Yak 10. Aha.
Yak 10. Save yourself 10%. Get yourself some Fat Boy rigs. You will not be disappointed. I'm always a big proponent of tying my own rigs, and I typically don't like to pre-tie them because then I have nowhere to put them. So I like to I'll have my rigs on my rods. If I break off, I'll just tie another one. It takes me all of 3 minutes to tie a rig. But when I have, Fat Boy rigs in my bag, it's really easy just to pull these out, tie on the swivel, and add a weight, and you're going. So I do like the Fat Boy rigs. Like I said, Kevin has now got his own 10-aught circle hooks. And I think they are a thicker version of the Mustad Demon hooks, I believe. I could be wrong, but I think that's what he said. But they're a lot thicker than the ones that he used to use. So, but a similar design. But yeah, I'm excited to use the Fat Boy rigs, and I appreciate Kevin for sending those to me.
Oh, that's one thing you talk about the thicker hooks and all that stuff. Man, it just goes to when you deal with people who are in the same genre as you, and man, that's where the good stuff comes from. They go through the same heartaches, heartbreaks as we do when we're using stuff. The thin hook snap, or the swivels break for some reason, or the line. If you got bad line, it breaks. I mean, they dealt with all those same problems we did, and it's just. All these companies. I mean, Kevin too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything bad about Kevin, obviously, because he's been through the same stuff we have.
Right.
So putting that higher quality stuff out there, it's good for everybody.
So I was just looking down through the comments real quick before I read through them all because I'm only 10 minutes behind in chat. Kevin said this is called the Fat Boy.
I mean, that would make sense.
So again, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you coming in this evening. Real quick, I'm going to go through chat just to say a quick hi to everybody that's come in thus far. We have Mike Sampson. Sampy's always one of the first people in here. Thank you so much. There's John Boy's Catfishing. Bill Reddick Outdoors saying hello, folks. There's the wonderful Miss V, the one taking over for the for Kevin for the why did my brain just blank?
Golden Whiskers.
Golden Whiskers, thank you. My memory is not what it used to be. Plus, I'm tired because I stayed up late. I intentionally needed to take some time off anyway, so I took today off and tomorrow off. But I took today off specifically so that I could stay up late and watch Ed Evans' show last night. So yeah, I don't get a chance much to watch Ed's show because it's from midnight to 4 a.m. So I stayed up as late as I could. Of course, I didn't realize or didn't remember that he was doing his 500 subscriber giveaway last night. So, but it was all good. It was all fun. Had a great time. Miss Linda, Butterflies and Sunshine, was in there helping him, and Rhonda was helping with all that. So they did a wonderful job. But that's why I'm tired, because I stayed up, and then of course I had to get up this morning to take Landon to work. So and then I didn't sleep much. So I was going today. But anyway, there's that. So anyway, there I said there's Miss V and Chris Catchfish with us. Thank you all for coming in. Paul Boyd, P&B Catfishing, how you doing? There's Uncle Jeep saying it's too darn hot here. Uncle Jeep being from Arizona, I believe it's too hot here. I can only believe what it's like in Arizona.
So I was in Michigan, kind of a rant, I guess. I was in Michigan last week, and I literally the week before, my dad said that they had a heat index of 117 in Michigan. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
we have a heat index of 106 here. I just want to, take everything off, but I can't imagine 117.
I'll tell you what, the one thing the heat's been doing here is thunderstorms every single night.
Dude, my yard, so we've been getting the thunderstorms, and tonight is the first time it's actually rained at my house in over a week. My front yard was actually cracking because of how dry it got after it had been so wet for the whole month of April and May and June.
Well, I think it rained. I bowled Tuesday night, and as we were getting ready to look, we were looking out the window or the doors, because it's see-through doors at the back of the bowling alley, and it was pouring buckets. And then everybody was getting ready to or putting everything away, and I'm like, okay, it's lighting up a little bit, and then you put everything away, get ready to walk out the door again, and the bottom fell out again. And it did that. It's done that like 3 nights in a row. I think tonight's the only night it hasn't thunderstormed. So, but anyway, we're talking about heat. Yeah. So Uncle Jeep saying it's too hot down there. He said, I greatly dislike this time of year. I don't blame you one bit. Crappy day, Darren. What's going on, my friend? There's Miss Rhonda, Fishing for Whiskers, saying howdy, hi, y'all. Hope everyone is doing well and having a great day driving and listening. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Let's see. Greg Burgess, how you doing, my friend? Hello, Dustin, my young brother. I don't feel young, but thank you. Mullet Man number 7, how you doing? There's Yak's Fishing Adventures, the new channel name. I don't know how new it is. I mean, it's newish, right?
It's newish, yeah. It's this year thing.
There you go. There's Catfish Fresno, formerly known as CVA. What's going on, brother? Thank you for coming in. Pontoon Jody Catfishing saying, hey, Dustin and Chat, listening while fishing. Well, are you bumping? If you're bumping, come on up. I'll send you the link. Let's see. Paul Boyd. Big Slim 91. What's going on, man? Good to see you. Sampy, Chris, Slim, Mullet Man. Miss Chrissy Brown, welcome in. Thank you so much. There's Freddie from F.O.A. Customs and Gear.
Hey.
Saying, let's go. Busy working, but listening in. Well, thank you so much, Freddie. Hope you're getting everything caught up and things aren't too crazy for you. Let's see. Paul Boyd. See, I'm going fish. There's Fish on that, Evans. Speaking of him, says, good evening, everyone. There's Charlie Wilkes saying, how is the river looking? Anyone fishing this weekend? I drove over the James River, about 4 hours ago, and it was high. It wasn't rushing really fast. It wasn't moving fast, but it was high in the city. So I'm guessing. I mean, I drove over a little bit farther upriver, and there's a dam up there, and there was a big tree hanging over the edge of the dam. It's a smaller dam. It's probably about a 10-foot tall wall. It's one of the only dams we have on this lower part of the James, but there was a huge tree hanging over the edge of it, halfway on, halfway off. So, and the water's pretty high. Sean said he drove over way upriver, and usually it's clear, and it was muddy. So let's see. Mullet Man, Big Slim V said, talking bumping, let's remind everyone who taught me how. LMAO, it's my one bragging moment in life. Well, who taught you how, Miss V? Please do share.
Well, I have a feeling it's Steve Douglas.
Oh, probably.
She was was talking about how excited she was to go on a fishing trip with him this fall as well. So just saying.
Well, there's Mr. Gimpy saying, what's up, y'all?
Hello, Mr. Gimpy.
There's one of our most favoriteest fans, and congratulations on the rod you won last night on Ed Evans' giveaway, Mr. Gregory Lemon. He's saying Double Hook Angling is going live tomorrow at 8:05 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Very nice.
Uncle Jeep says, stop flashing fish, Dustin. I'm telling you, those flatheads love to be flashed. Something about it. Mr. Gimpy said, did some bumping in college. It also involved nice. Also involved grinding.
Oh,
there's Kevin from Palmetto Cats. Said Gregory said, I'm glad I won the rod from Fish on Ed Evans. Absolutely. That was exciting last night. I did stay up long enough to see that. That was so much fun. Let's see. Butterflies in the Sunshine. Hi, Dustin, Yak, and Chat. Miss Linda, thank you so much. It was funny. When she was on the show last night, she saw my name. So everybody that came into and said hello in the chat got their name put in the jug for the drawing. They had like 8 items they were doing drawings for. So I popped in there and chatting with everybody, and she wrote my name, put my name on the ticket. She goes, okay, Dustin's overboard. It's funny because she is the one that bought our anchors on my boat for me. The never lost anchors that I have on my boat. My very first year at CatCon, she was generous enough to buy them for me. And so I've named my anchors Butterflies and Sunshine. So my front anchor is Butterfly, my back anchor is Sunshine, and Butterflies goes overboard every time I go fishing. So
nice.
But that was pretty funny that she said that last night. Let's see. We're almost caught up, I swear. I promise.
I think you pretty much got everybody. Daniel from 205, I saw him in there, and then your biggest heckler is here. The man who just finally started fishing again. Has been retired for years, feels like. Also a fellow F.O.A. friend. Yeah, we're talking bubbles.
Okay. I'll get the bubbles in a minute. Palmetto said, yes, those are my hooks on those rigs. That's awesome. Can't wait to use them, bud. Uncle Jeep said, need a place to store your rigs. Stick it in your thumb. You will know where it is at all times. Trust me on that. There's Hoggy Boy 1967 says, I fish pike in Scotland with not much luck. Well, welcome in. Thanks for coming in, buddy. Glad you're able to find us. Hope you enjoy the show. Hope you enjoy the content. And hope you've had a fantastic week. There's the 205 Wild Action Man. What's going on, brother? I know, Gregory. I saw that you won last night. That was awesome. Chris is Catfish with us. Said, howdy, Hoggy Boy. I fish pike in Canada. Red Devil spoons are my go-to. Speaking of bumping, Mr. Bobcat himself saying, someone say bumping? I did. We've said it a couple of times. Matter of fact. There's Mr. John Cyclone from River Cats Tackle saying, hey, everyone.
Welcome.
Let's see. Oh, there's a boom, boom, bam. Mr. Palmetto Cats Sprinkles, $1.99. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you. Let's see. Hug Boy said, catch this weekend will be one of the hottest in Glasgow ever. I have no chance, but at least there will be sun for a change. Wow. It seems like that heat thing is a problem everywhere. Let's see. Bobcat said, "I'm not bumping, but I've been editing a bumping video." Well, that counts.
Surprise, surprise. Oh wait.
There's Bubbles, and his comment. All I can hear is the SpongeBob. 2 hours later. Oh man. Yes, I'm behind on chat, but I'm getting there. V said Donnie Fountain. Is Donnie Fountain in here? Or y'all just talking about something? Let's see. I've never seen someone so far back in chat. Did he just learn how to live stream? Look, I took my cues from you, Brian. I learned from the worst. Oh boy. Look, I'm caught up.
See that?
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
That's who taught me how to bump.
Ah.
Gotcha. Bobcat is a good teacher. The problem is it's one of those things where he taught. I had to go back and remember the rig that he showed me that he tied. And it's one of those things that if you don't do it, you get so used to doing things a certain way that you forget that. I mean, if I could be mistaken. Oh, Donnie taught her. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you. Don't tell anybody I said that. But it's one of those things that if you don't do it and you get so accustomed to doing things like with the 3-way rig, if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw this correctly and I remember correctly. The 3-way swivel, your main line comes to the top, and then your leader line with your hook goes to the side, and your weight goes to the bottom. Is in line with your main line, which is the exact opposite of the way I usually do things.
I think it's the opposite. Most people do things with that. I mean, and the advantage of that, obviously, as Bob can tell you, Donnie can tell you, V can tell you, is that it gives you a more direct contact to your sinker, which is 90% probably of bumping is being able to contact it or feel that sinker.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say that catching a fish while bumping is the feeling of catching a fish while bumping is second to none. I mean, I love reeling in the big fish. You know, that the 63 that I reeled in when I was with Austin, you know, reeling that fish in was awesome. But when I was out with Bobcat and that fish hit and hooked up on that rod that I was bumping with, I mean, it almost tears it out of your hand.
Yep.
And then you gotta fight the current, then you gotta fight the boat, then you gotta fight all the obstacles, and then so it's an awesome feeling.
And honestly, the whole ripping out of your hand thing, you're so used to feeling that sinker, and you're just waiting for that light tick. We were fishing that chicken tournament. I was bumping chicken, and you know, I threw on a whole chicken breast in the hopes of catching a big fish. A 5-pound channel cat smacking that chicken in current. I have never caught an 80-pounder. So I can't say it's like an 80-pounder. I've caught 40. I've caught several 30s. It's almost the same feeling. They still almost rip out of your hand. It's nuts. You know, he's only 5. You know, I think the smallest one I caught bumping was 3 pounds, but it's still, they hit it so hard. Like Bob said, it multiplies the weight in the fight for sure.
Yep, the current. Yep, and you have to have current in order to bump, or else it's not really bumping. I think you can walk baits. That's a different strategy, different technique, a similar setup. I guess that's the same setup, but it's not doing the same thing, right? So if I'm not like when I went out with Bobcat, we went up by the dam where the current was the swiftest, right?
Yep.
And then so trolling motor on the front of the boat, and then so you turn the trolling motor on. And you use the trolling motor to slow your boat down, but you're not spot locking, right? So you're using the trolling motor. You still want to be moving with the current, but your boat wants to be smaller. Good gracious, your boat. You want your boat to be slower, but still moving with the current. So I think Bobcat said I think Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said you get about 1 mile an hour when
that's what he was telling me too. He likes to be around that 1 hour, or not 1 mile, or 1 mile area, and it depends how much current they're actually running too. Obviously,
right.
if you're further downstream, you can bump in slower water still.
Right.
But there is a point where you are basically, there is a point where it's slow enough you wouldn't even have to use a trolling motor, other than just to keep your boat facing the right direction. I do believe I read somewhere there's some guys out in the Mississippi that will bump at 2 miles an hour. But there's a lot of things that go into that. Minute changes. Bob, I know Bob's got the whole thing memorized when he's teaching me too. I don't have all this memorized. You want to use the lightest sinker you can get away with and still feel it.
Right.
Because it has to maintain contact with the bottom. So the smallest I've ever been able to use and still feel the bottom is 2 ounces when I'm using the 65-pound braid below the dam. But you can even bump with a light setup. I was doing it a while back. Now, granted, I wasn't in a boat. I was fishing a current seam. So what that is commonly referred to, like you see people walking baits. It's also called slipping.
Okay.
The difference between the walking and slipping. Walking, you're stationary the whole time, and then you move. Slipping, you bump a section, then you let your boat drift down a little bit. You bump that same stretch, right, but you're a little further downstream, so you don't have to worry about being 400 yards behind the boat. It's still technically bumping. You're still bumping the bottom. It's just the difference is, rather than moving with and covering more water with a lighter weight, you go with a heavier sinker, and then you're purposely letting the current take your bait further and further away from you. But you're still tapping the rock, still tapping the structure, following the contours down.
Right.
The heaviest I've had to use it was 6 ounces, and that's because I had a 12-volt trolling motor in really heavy current that I probably shouldn't have been trying to bump in, but still tried anyway. Obviously, you're not using a 6-ounce sinker on a lighter setup, but the light setup that I was using for channel cats, and I was actually catching other species too, because you can, with the lighter setups, you can bump for any other species, including catfish. But you can use like live shiners and still bump. You can use night crawlers, still bump. With a lighter setup, maybe 20, instead of 65-pound braid, use 20-pound braid, and maybe use a bass rod bait cat, or something smaller like that. And you could in theory even use it with a spinning reel. But the biggest thing is being able to feel the bump. If you can't feel the bump, then your setup's not sensitive enough.
Right.
And I personally, my bumping rod that I like is made by a brand called Cat. I am looking forward to trying the F.O.A. ones when they finally come out, if they come out. I know they're currently being beta tested. But that one I have, it's a extra heavy fast tip. It has with it having the stiffer tip and being the 65-pound braid and metal eyes versus the ceramic rings. It's got a lot of feel. It's really nice. And that one in particular, I'm a taller individual, so that one has the longer handle. And what I was saying earlier about 90% being feeling the weight, the other 10% is being comfortable the whole time you're doing it, because you're literally doing this nonstop. And having a lighter rod makes a big difference. Having one that's the right length if you're tall or short, or if you're sitting down versus standing up, makes a big difference. And a lot of it comes down to personal preference. Almost every rod brand out there has a bumping rod. I've used a few. Bob has everyone on the market, feels like. And so I've been able to try several with his out of his collection. Shatter's still my favorite personally, but I am quite a bit taller than Bob, so I think that probably has a major influence on that for sure.
Right. Sorry, I was doing something on my phone.
I didn't mean to run a rant. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Just trying to save that. Okay. So V brought up a question, and I want to make a couple comments on something. V asked Bob what the best depth for bumping is. She said she forgot to ask when she was being taught. And Bobcat said whatever depth that is holding fish, as long as you have current, it doesn't matter. So I can only imagine. Now I've been watching a lot Spencer, River Certified.
Channel.
He's been fishing a lot with Micah Burkhart. And when they go out, they love to bump. And I know Spencer likes to bump some of the shallower rivers and the smaller creeks and stuff that he sometimes he calls it walking baits, but anyway, the technique is the same essentially. But I can only imagine. I love catching fish when they're shallow, 3 to 4 to 6 foot of water, something like that. Because there's only a couple places that can go, like side to side or backward. So they can't dive. So it's fun watching, with that fight there. But I can only imagine trying to catch. If you think about a fish when you're bumping, right, and you're in deeper water, if they are coming up on the bait, right, they're going to be swimming up into the water column. Well, then at that point, once they swim up, now they have options. They can go down, they can go left. When you're in 5 feet of water, if there's a big fish that takes your bait, it can't go down. So imagine that extra. I think there might be a little bit of extra pull on your rod if it's if it can't go down, it has to go somewhere else.
Makes sense to me.
So I think that would be that would be fun. To bump. There's a place that I drag baits a lot, but I can't bump there because there's not really current in there. But I do want to bump the city. Sean and I want to try that at some point. There's usually not a lot of current, but there's always current, and it's in the city going downriver is always going in the same direction. The tide doesn't affect the city current, or the incoming and outgoing change doesn't affect the current flow in the city, because that's right there by the rocks and the fall line, and so the water's always going downriver at that point. So It's more like a bathtub. When the tide comes in, the current's still going downriver, but when the tide comes in, it just raises the water level. So it's kind of like a bathtub at that point. So it's going up and down, but it's still going downriver. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And at some point, the further you get downriver, at some point there is a point in which that changes. So there is a point when the tide is coming in, you meet that that spot, and now the water coming, the tide coming in is pushing you back upriver, but the water coming from upriver is pushing you downriver, right? So there's that spot in which that stops. But anyway, what I was going to say after I get hey, Missy Kennedy, Jerry Hagar, I saw you come in here. One of the things that I think is important when you're going to bump is the right setup. And I say the right setup to have the proper gear for that. And Bobcat, I think made, or Mr. Gimpy, I believe, made a post about trolling. All he's got is spinning rigs. Excuse me. And Bobcat's like spinning, bumping, trying to bump with a spinning reel would be goofy. But you want to have a low profile reel, a low profile bait caster. I mean, you can have a regular bait caster, I believe, but I think a low profile is better because you can put your. I mean, it's more you. And
the biggest thing for me is weight at that point.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because I've used both because I didn't have the money for a low profile. Well, I say that I didn't have the money for the one I wanted. Let me put it that way. Recently this year, actually, I've you know what? I have a bass fishing low profile reel. I fished the Tennessee River, which is significantly shallower than the Mississippi. I'm never going to need more than 150, maybe 200 yards of line. Why not try this? So I literally have a bass fishing bait caster on my pumping rod right now. It works just fine. It's the same gear ratio as the one I wanted to get, which is the one that I had the most experience pumping with is a PC Fun Alios. They're about $90, whereas the one I paid for is about $35. The difference being those ones, I'm guessing when you fish with Bob, you used it's got the extra button on the side to lock the spool down, rather than having to turn the handle to lock it in.
I turned to the handle to lock the one I was using when I was with him.
Well, you can do it either way. I'm just saying, but if it's the reel that he taught me on, you have the bottom spool button, and then right to the right of it is another little, almost looks like a little lever, and you can hold it down, and it locks the spool also until you can start cranking. That way the nice thing about that is you can obviously leave your spool in free spool the whole entire time, which when you're doing the regular bumping with the boat and the boat's moving the whole time isn't as big of a deal because you're constantly adjusting your line to make sure you're in the right height. But I would think if you're slipping where your boat's kind of anchored and you're just doing the seam, or if you're walking a bait because you're not in a boat, that would be more advantageous, being able to leave that spool open the whole time, because then you're not having to constantly constantly lock down and re-release the spool to change the depth. Just food for thought for anybody who's into that kind of thing.
Absolutely. There's Creole Catfishing. What's up, brother? Hope you're doing well.
But yeah, your normal bait casters are quite a bit bulkier and quite a bit heavier.
Yep. I use I'm going to use once I get the hopefully the bumping rod, the F.O.A. bumping rod. Right now, the rod I would probably bump with is the Leviathan rod by Ancient Mariner. It's a 7-foot rod. And then I also have on that rod, I have the Ancient Mariner Ocean Tycoon, the original. And that's the the low profile Ancient Mariner. He's got a newer Ocean Tycoon out that I haven't messed with yet, that I haven't gotten yet, but newer within the last year. But yeah, so back to the gear. So you, what length of rod do you typically use when you're bumping? And Bobcat, you can answer too if you want.
I think most of them are around the same. I don't know how long the one that Freddie's working on is. That one might be a little shorter, but I think mine's a 7 foot, maybe a 7. No, mine's a 7'6". I'm pretty sure. The biggest thing with rod length, I would think, I don't know this for sure, I have nowhere near the bumping experience as Bob or some of these other people, but weight's more important than length. As long as you have the sensitivity, as long as you have the backbone to fight the fish in the current like that, or if you're in lighter current, you have the lighter tackle, make sure you have enough to deal with the fish you need to deal with. But again, because you're doing that same repetitive motion nonstop, weight's gonna be more of an issue. If you're, depending on how you hold it, I hold mine where the butt of the rod is either in the crack between my stomach and my thigh if I'm sitting down, or on my thigh if I'm standing up. So, you're doing that motion nonstop. I've seen some people do it without having the butt of the rod touching them at all, which means they're getting that whole entire weight on just their forearm and their wrist. So, a couple ounces is going to make a huge difference when you're doing it for an hour on end.
Right. Absolutely. Bobcat said the 7 foot to 7'6". Dustin, you were using the 7 foot B&M rod. So that's the one he had me using.
So I used the BMN. He let me use the Uncle Lou bumping rod. I used the Shatter Cat. That's when I ended up buying one. And then he let me use, I think it was the Tangle the Catfish one last time I was on the boat with him. So I've tried a few. In my experience, most of them are similar. That's not true. I take that back. One thing he pointed out when I was with him last time, speaking of comfort, the butt ends of the rod, how wide they are or skinny they are, makes a big difference on comfort too. Now the Shatter Cat one is not super, super wide. Doesn't really bother me. I got a fatty leg. Probably doesn't hurt for that part, right? A little extra cushion. But some of them have a really, really thin butt to try to minimize more weight. That one's going to be more uncomfortable. There is one, I can't remember which one he had. He has one where the butt is oversized on purpose for comfort, and that one was interesting.
Gotcha.
And it could make a big difference, especially for somebody who, maybe has sensitivity to pressure, or, maybe has a bony leg or something like that.
Right.
Might be a little more comfortable.
Bobcat said the B&M rod is a great beginner rod.
I will say the first article I ever read about bumping, after I heard Bob talk about it, I was like, I want to look more for that. One of the first articles I found online of that was actually by one of the pro stabbers for B&M at the time. And that article talked about how that was basically the first rod that ever came out, was their original B&M bumping rod. Specifically, the B&M silver something or other. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but they were one of the first, if not the first, bumping rod company that made a bumping rod.
Gotcha. Mr. Gimpy asked, Creo said that the new Ocean, or the Ancient Mariner Ocean Tycoon 400 is a beast. Yeah, I want to get my hands on one. I just haven't done that yet, but I will get another one. I'm depends on how, if I'm able to get the F.O.A. bumping rod, if that one that comes to market, then I'm gonna put the Ocean Tycoon I have on it and see how that one works before I upgrade to the 400. But that Ocean Tycoon is, regardless of what I use it for, is my best casting reel that I have. I love it. Let's see. Creo said 7'6" is a great overall length. Butt length behind the reel seat is extremely important for comfort. He said, I've used many different brands of bumping rods, some better than others. I definitely have my favorites. Yeah, I think it all comes down to what's comfortable for you.
And that's what I said, where preference is the big thing. You know, right. the general technique, the general tactic's the same, in my experience. But yeah, the comfort is a big thing because you have to be comfortable. Now, I will say this: if you're fishing with somebody who's teaching you how to bump, and you catch a fish, they're happy for you. You catch a second fish and they still haven't caught a fish, you're going to be uncomfortable either way because they're threatening to throw you in the river. Ask me how I know.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to hook into one when I was with Bobcat. Unfortunately, he didn't get on one that day, but I did get into one. I think it was a 30-pounder. So that was a lot of fun. But
I think my first one was only like a teener, but it was still cool.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about. Well, let me get through the setup first before I tell my story. But so the rod length is not as important. 7'6" is great overall length. Butt length, like Creo said, behind the reel seat is extremely important for comfort. Again, you're going to want a low profile reel, because like you said, I think a lot of the low profiles are made out of plastic. So a lot of the bait casters are made out of metal. So obviously they're going to be lighter for that instance. You're going to want to use braid because braid is more sensitive than mono. It just is. There's nothing. I despise braid, and I refuse to use braid in anything that I do except for bait fishing and bumping. And the reason you use it for bait fishing is because you're fishing for smaller bluegill, crappie, the stuff like that you want to know when they bite. You need the sensitivity. And so that transitions right over to bumping. So you're going to want braid. Now, I guess the strength of braid is all dependent on how, I guess, your reel, your rod, your comfort, what your current, the size of fish that you have in your waters. So but that goes for pretty much anything.
Sure.
Sorry.
I use 65 pound braid personally for mine. I know some people like to go a little higher. One advantage to using a little bit lighter braid, obviously, is if you do get hung, because inevitably you will. If you are unable to break your sinker line, it's actually your hook that's stuck. If you're using 120 pound leader and you got 65 pound, or I'm sorry, you got 85 pound braid, it could be harder to break free, which if you are in faster water could, depending on where you're at, could result in a slightly more dangerous situation. Bob likes to thread the needle a lot with the train bridge below Chickamauga. I do it sometimes, but I'd rather break off my 65 pound braid than possibly run into the bridge trying to deal with 80 or 90.
Yes. John Boys said medium heavy or heavy rod for bumping.
I'm going to say it depends on what you're going after. Again, if you're doing a lightweight setup, you probably can get away with medium heavy. The biggest thing is no matter what you do, be able to feel your sinker. I know I could be wrong. Freddie, if you're in here, correct me. his bumping rod is a little bit different than the one I use. The one I use is an extra heavy fast. I think his was a medium heavy with the stiffer tip, if I remember correctly. The stiffer tip still is the design with that is to still be able to feel the bottom, but you have a little more bend in the rod. Which one advantage to that, obviously, it gives you a little more cushion in terms of fighting the fish. Drag wise, not so much strength or brute strength on your knots right off the bat. The other part of that, obviously, if you're fighting smaller fish, you still get good bend.
Right. So Creo said that we use 65 pound on ours, both Power Pro. I run Max Quattro, and Andrew runs the Super Slick V2.
Yeah, I think Power Pro on mine as well, but it's just whatever the one that Walmart carries, the green one. I can't remember which version of the Power Pro they have there off the top of my head.
Yeah, I do know, and will say, because I'm a huge supporter of Captain Spearon and Ancient Mariner. Ancient Mariner also does sell braid. If you're interested, they have it on his website, ancientmarinerfishing.net. I'm not sure if you can get that from River Cat's Tackle. I know you can get a lot of all the other Ancient Mariner gear from there, but I don't know if he sells the braid on there or not. I haven't looked. But if he even still sells it, I haven't looked for the braid specifically on his website, but I do know that he came out with braid. So, and I'm not sure what weight it is. But one of the things, going back to your comment a minute ago about the sinker, one of the things, yes, we sell the Ancient Mariner braid. Okay, thank you, Creo. What's the strength on that? If you don't mind me asking. But back to the weight. So I know Bobcat says whatever. So say Bobcat uses 65 pound braid on his main line. His and then whatever his coming off the side of that three-way is going to be anything from 20 pound to 100 pound. Okay, thanks, Creo. Appreciate that. Will be whatever his normal setup is, right? But then his sinker he puts on 20 pound mono.
Yep.
So if that sinker gets hung up, that's going to be the first thing that breaks.
Yep. I use whatever I got available. You know, it may cost me more sinkers, but if I only have 10 pound mono laying around somewhere, that's what I use. I just use whatever mono I don't plan on putting on a reel. You know, but yeah, like you said, the biggest thing is to make sure it's significantly lighter than your leader or your main line. You know, you're putting on, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute. If you're doing your rigs, a lot of the bumping rigs have a lot more pieces on them, so you're inevitably making them more expensive already. So having that lighter loop, because 90%, I'm gonna say 90%, 80% of the time, probably your sinker is what's snagging, not your hook. Not always the case, like I said, but it's definitely the majority of the time. So saving your rig is going to save you, one, a lot of money, but two, in the case of Brandon's a good example. At chicken tournament, that 50 pounder he caught, the fish broke the dropper loop because he was trying to unbreak a snag, and all of a sudden it broke the loop and swam upstream. You know, so it has its benefits, even if they're not direct.
Right. Mr. Gimpy, no, River Cat's Tackle is not the Ancient Mariner, but Captain Spearon is the proprietor of Ancient Mariner, and they are partnering with River Cat Tackle. So, which Creo and his brother are both parts of. The Swains, Bobby from 922. There's a few others. But if you go to rivercasttackle.com, you can purchase the Ancient Mariner gear we were talking about. I believe the Swain's 10, Creo, I don't know. It's probably Creo 10 if I had to guess, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. And I know Bobby's 92210. I like Bobby's because it's just numbers. It's easy to remember.
Sure.
But that's another thing. John Boy's great question. How long is the sinker line? The sinker line is what? How long do you have the sinker line? I don't remember. I want to say 3 feet, but I could be wrong when Bobcat was setting it up. But I don't remember how long it was. I think it's double the length of the leader, right?
For me, it's the opposite. I run a much shorter sinker line and run a much longer leader. if that's the case. I don't remember him doing a 3-foot sinker line. I think it also depends on your rig. If you're using a rig that has a float on it or a Demon Dragon style brattle on it, something that's got buoyancy,
right,
you're going to want a shorter sinker line because otherwise you're basically way, way, way above the fish. And yeah, some fish are going to chase it down if they're aggressive, but a lot of those fish are just sitting there waiting for the bait to literally just kind of almost bump them in the face. Because that's what they're doing naturally. They're just sitting there and they're only hitting the things that are coming right past the rock in front of their nose or right past the tree.
I was backwards. I apologize. I was backwards. That's why I have the experts in chat and up on panel because I know very little about bumping. So your leader or your weight length line is half the length of your leader. Thank you, Bobcat. Thank you, Anthony.
And obviously that's just a rough estimate. He's not sitting out. I promise you, he's not sitting out there measuring 12-inch leaders or 12-inch sinker lines for a 24-inch leader. It's just eyeball. And part of it's also line management too. I mean, if you have, say you had both of them really, really long, obviously they're going to twist and stuff, and that's where a lot of the extra components in those rigs come into play as well. Obviously, every 3-way swivel. That's what starts it off. We talked about how your sinker line's off the exact opposite end of your main line, so you get the full sensitivity, and your rig is coming off the side, which the way that's set up, it'll be set up downriver, and it minimizes the twist there. Bob is the one that showed me about the chain swivels. Those make a huge difference, especially if you end up with a piece of bait where the gut falls out in the pockets there and it's hooked just right. It starts spinning. Well, at least you're still fishing. It's not tangling up because that chain swivel's keeping it going. And I'm sure we'll talk about rigs in a minute because obviously there's some variances there too. But the big thing is if you have flotation on your rig, then you can get away with a shorter sinker line because it still keeps the bait in the strike zone. Yeah, like Reel said, all that same stuff too.
He also said it also depends on how your river bottom is shaped. Sharper contours require a shorter leader than the flat bottoms. Got it.
And I'm assuming that's so you can follow the contour better. Obviously I'm assuming the downfall of that would be obviously with the sharper, taller rocks or more variance in rocks. You want to be able to get in those holes easier. But then the downfall of that obviously you're probably going to snag up more too. Right. I would think. Just something to keep in mind. But you basically have to put this bait in the fish's face, especially these bigger fish. I mean, I like to use for catfish. I love to use the fat kid at a table analogy. You're walking by a counter and there's a cake on it. Somebody's going to taste it, right? You put it right there. I mean, come on.
So Mr. Gimpy asked what the best bait is, and Bobcat said skipjack head. And to that comment, again, like I said earlier, I've been watching a lot of Spencer River Certified, and he hunts flatheads, and he hunts monster flatheads, and he says that in his experience, the bigger fish go after the head pieces more.
That is what Bob told me. I've heard Spencer say that, and there was another person I watched that said that too. And I'm just gonna be 100% honest here. I have never caught a fish bumping with a headpiece. Don't know why. Just haven't. Most of my big ones have been on big body sections. I have caught some decent fish on cut bluegill, and I've caught the biggest bumpy fish I caught was on a big old body section of gizzard shad. I think the biggest thing is not so much the bait itself, but how fresh it is and how bloody it is.
Right.
Because you're kind of, since you are going slower than the current, having that scent trail going downstream just a little bit ahead, he's going to get the fish's attention. But the biggest thing is putting the bait right in front of the face. I mean, I was using Jello chicken last time I went bumping and was still catching fish too. It's just a matter of putting the bait in their face. I don't think the bait is as critical. Now, obviously, some bait's going to outperform others based on time of year. I'm probably not going to bring American eel down here and try to use it. It's not something the fish see all the time down here. Obviously, I'm going to do stuff that you look more of. Chicken's the closest thing we can do to mussels because you can't harvest freshwater mussels here in Tennessee. Yep. So that's the thing they're closely related to here with that. Obviously, any of the bait fish, cut bass, you can literally use anything. And actually, I've been experimenting, and I've been experimenting. I've done it once. I didn't catch any fish that trip. I don't know if it was because of the bait or just because of the time. I only got to fish for about an hour. I've been trying to bump with live baits in slower current areas. It's not necessarily right there in front of the dam where then it may not see it because there's no scent coming from them, right? Because they're alive. But
right.
I've been experimenting with that, and I'm curious to see how that works out. I have a feeling it'll actually do okay as long as I'm in the right spot.
Yeah, Bobcat said when Brandon and him go fishing tournaments, Brandon steals all the fish heads, all the bait heads. He said there will be a cooler full of skipjack torsos.
I can think of worse things.
And it's funny you mentioned that because I was watching one of Spencer's videos recently. I think it was last week, and he pulled out a Ziploc bag, and everything in the Ziploc bag was a body chunk of some sort. He used all the head pieces and he threw all the body chunks in a Ziploc bag and put it in the cooler. So
no bait left behind, right?
That's right. So I mean, he does catch a lot of channel cats, and he'll use the body sections for channel cats. But when he wants to go big fish hunting, he'll use head pieces on a lot of them. Are the bigger, Mr. Gimpy said, are the bigger ones zombies eating brains? Well, I believe, and I mean, I know we don't know how a fish thinks, if a fish thinks, if it's more reactionary, whatever. But I truly believe, and this goes along with my philosophy or theory more on the flasher rig from Fat Boy Rigs. I think the eyes have a lot to do with it as well. So if the fish is, because the fish can see the predator can see the eyes of its bait, right? So I think the bigger fish are attracted to that too, and that's why I think the flasher rig, especially for flatheads, not bumping, of course, but just in general, I think because flatheads have better eyesight than blues and channel cats, I think the eyes on the bait on the bait itself plus the flasher attracts the predators, the bigger predators.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was curious if whenever we do the bumping episode on our show on Saturdays, if you're gonna be trying the flasher rig, because I have a feeling that would actually do pretty well.
Absolutely, I am. I'll tell you what. Everywhere I've gone, that I've caught multiple flatheads with the flasher rig, I'm usually near flathead territory. Like there's a bank or a point that's got a lot of brush that's always sitting around there, or down trees or whatever. But I'll catch them in the channel.
Right.
I think what's happening is that flasher is attracting them out of their habitats, and they're coming down and they're hitting that in the channel. And then, when of course I throw them back, they're probably going back up under a tree somewhere or a log. But I think it's pulling them out of their habitats.
And very well could be, like you said, they have better eyesight. I mean, those things were made for hunting stuff.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, you see blue cats chasing schools of bait fish or following below schools of bait fish or whatever. Channel cats kind of being known as the vultures of the river, but flatheads definitely are the apex predator between those three species.
Sorry, if someone says I'm fat-headed, then it's a compliment. I'm really brainy. Absolutely. We will go with that.
But and just to back to the flathead part, this technique is not species specific. Obviously, if you're going after active fish that are, I say active fish, you're going after fish that are dealing with heavier current, which will generally lend to being bigger fish. Because if the current's going so fast, then the small fish can't even keep up with the muscles or whatnot. Not muscles, but with the movement to be able to stay up further. The bigger fish are going to also push the smaller fish out of those juicy rocks and crevices that they like to be in. It's definitely a technique that seems to lend itself to bigger fish on average.
Right. Yeah. So I think we've covered. I think one of the key things you covered there towards the end when we were talking about your leader, that bear or the chain swivel, I think is very important because you're fishing current, right? You're fishing current, and it's by nature, by the way of how you're fishing, is going to be pulling on that bait. And if you're, I mean, if you don't have a fish, like a full live fish that can control itself, there's nothing you can do. That bait's going to spin at some point.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter how you hook it.
You probably could get away with. I don't know if you could do it with a regular swivel, but a ball bearing swivel might be a suitable replacement. But the nice thing about the chain swivel is because it has so many connection points and all of them can spin, but it's rigid enough to stay in shape. I think that's why those tend to be preferred and seem to work better.
Right.
Just because it does spin more freely. And just before I know it's 10 o'clock, but back to the rigs thing. One thing that I know Steve Douglas has been experimenting with, rather than using a float, he's been using a Colorado blade, like you would see on like a crawler rig for walleye, to create more thump. He's been I've watched him catch fish with it on his videos, but that's something he'd been messing with just to try something different. But the issue with that, it gives you more feel. But one thing I would be curious about with that, are you feeling the sinker at that point, or are you feeling the blade? Is that an issue or something you have to learn with? I don't know. But it's definitely something else to try. And there's other people trying stuff too. I think the flasher rig would be a really good thing to try, especially if you're bumping at night. Whether you use a Demon Dragon or whether you use a regular peg float, it depends if you want rattle or not. One thing that we didn't talk about though with the rigs, float or not float, is how you cut your baits, or how you hook your baits even. With the head pieces, you want to go through both lips of the bait. One, it puts the bait in a horizontal position, which goes back to the whole, them seeing the eyes or whatever, looks more natural that way. But if you don't go through both lips, that mouth's going to fan open, and that's going to make your rig spin more. So if you don't have the chain swivel, that could be a problem. It's going to cause more drag, which means you'll need a bigger sinker. If you're using body sections, one thing that can help to use smaller sinkers or not have to use as heavy of a sinker, however way you want to word it, is actually to cut the bottom of the gut pocket off.
Yep.
So it's not like a parachute. Now that hindsight 2020, if you're snagging up a bunch, doing something like that where you get the extra little push up could help you as well. So something to keep in mind. I know, not that I want to give away everybody's secrets. One thing I learned from Mike Greenwell from bumping, he actually prefers to use, well, I don't know if he still does, but at one point he was preferring to use strips or fillets rather than whole chunks. And it was one for scent dispersion because you get more direct. You have to replace your bait more often, but you immediately have blood going out from the whole entire bait at once on your hook. But two, he was eliminating the parachuting effect of the stomach cavity, the mouth, or the spine, anything like that. It was eliminating drag, which made it easier for him to feel the sinker.
Right. Absolutely.
From what he told me correctly. So I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do out there to change it up and do it a little bit different than somebody else. And one thing I learned from Bob also, if you're doing it for several passes with one setup, change it up. I mean, he's got 6 rods, so he's got all of them tied up different, right? But, if you're doing a peg float rig for, 30 minutes or so, don't, go and switch to a rattle rig or whatever. Or, in the case of Steve's thing, switch to a blade rig or switch to not having a float at all. Or, putting that bait in a different angle, whether it be closer to the rocks or a little higher off from the rocks or making noise or not making noise. Every day is a little bit different on the river. You're never going to do the same thing every single time and catch fish the same way every single time.
Right. And Creo said in slow current, that parachute effect will help pull your rig along.
Speaking of current, one thing I still can't do correctly, when you get stuck in an eddy while you're bumping, that is a challenge. You will lose the feeling of the sinker. No matter how many components on there you have to eliminate spin, it's going to have a chance of getting tangled. Your boat, if it's not in the exact same spot on the eddy, it could end up getting pulled down river. Your boat's back, not backwards, but your rig ends up being up river of your boat. So that's another thing you have to deal with too. Obviously, in a perfect situation, you're going to fish a seam or a river channel where the current's, consistently going in one direction. But those fish definitely hang out in those eddies, and some of the biggest fish I've seen caught bumping have come from those eddies. But a lot of times, you don't feel them until, like you said, they start swimming sideways or, in opposite direction of what it looks like it should be doing. So, I mean, there's a lot of nuances.
Sorry. Good night. I just want to say good night, Bobcat. Good night, John boys. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you joining us this evening, and appreciate all your input, Bobcat. I know you were busy and you had a lot to take care of. I appreciate you stopping in and helping us out tonight. You as well, Creo. It's always a pleasure having you all in the chat. But the story I was going to tell when I was out with Bobcat, we were and what your comment just kind of led to was a perfect lead into this story, because we were already past the barge tie-offs, and there was an eddy on the right hand side of the river, and I thought I felt the sinker, and I kept going. So I kept letting line out. And I was trying to find the bottom at one point, and then I'm like, that's not right. So I locked it down. I started reeling up, and my rod went from the back of the boat all the way to the side of the boat, and then I reeled up to a point where I'm like, hey Bob, my line's in your prop of your trolling motor.
Well, I luckily mine didn't go in his trolling motor, but I have several similar situations when he was teaching me, for sure. Now I will say that I give Bob a lot of junk, because he threatened to throw me in the river. He hit me in the side of the head with a sinker on a tournament we were fishing together. I mean, all kinds of stuff, right? While we've been bumping, but that man really taught me a lot.
Absolutely.
And I have every bit of success I have bumping, I can thank him for sure. Because he taught me everything that I have used and have done well with. Like I said, I've been experimenting with some stuff, and I think everybody should. My biggest thing lately, like I said, I'm curious to see how that live bait will do on an extended time basis.
Creo said, when the eddy takes the rig sideways, catch your slack up, bump it slowly back to the boat until it catches current again, then repeat. You'll bump the eddy in a circle. Excellent technique.
Ooh, I didn't think about that. Yeah. Thank you. I will definitely have to give that a shot next time by those same barge tie-offs, because that's definitely where those eddies are right there.
Yep.
The only eddies there that I don't think you can effectively fish is when you're threading the needle for that train bridge. I really don't think there's a safe way to do those eddies behind those railings right there.
I agree.
It's too narrow of a spot.
Yep. Or something else I was going to say, but I forgot. But hey, Shad Daddy, welcome in.
Woo!
But yeah, so I mean, as everybody noticed or gleaned from tonight's episode, I am not an expert in bumping. I've only done it one time. I want to do it more. I just haven't had the opportunity to do that. And like I said, my boat's not set up for that per se. Hopefully, and maybe this next weekend for the when is the LFTL tournament? That's on the 19th, right?
I think so. Don't hold me to that.
I'm holding you to that. Yak Shore told me.
Yeah. Well, Dustin also said I was an expert, because if he's not the expert, he said he was an expert on panel. I've been trying to look for him all day. I have a little bit of experience with it. It's definitely one of my favorite techniques. Especially, it's so, if you have the ability to have a spot, like Bob and I are fortunate, right? We're 10 minutes from the dam. It is definitely the fastest way to get to be catfishing on the river, other than just pulling up on the bank spot and casting out and waiting, right? But it's an active way of fishing, which is nice, especially if you aren't necessarily able to sit still long enough, like you fidget a lot. It's helpful for that. It's also a really good way to cover water.
Right.
It's if you ever look at his fish finder, if he ever hits reset, which I don't know if he ever will, but if he ever resets his fish finder, it's nothing but a scribbly mess of lines because of how many times he can drift that, and it makes it's very effective. And the only downfall to it, unless you're in a very straight section where your boat's not going to drift left and right, if you have somewhere where there's a lot of turbulence, which I think is better fishing wise, you might start in the exact same spot, exact same motor speed and everything, but you're going to drift a completely different path every single time.
Right.
And it's just the way the water works. But it is something to keep in mind, because I can't tell you how many times I've tried to drift the lane that goes by those eddies, by that barge tie off, and then I wind up on the other side of Chatt, the other side of the river, which is fine. I don't necessarily personally care. But my biggest example of that, keeping that in mind, if you ever go bumping below Watts Bar Dam, if you're looking at the dam, the left-hand side of the dam, there is one point that comes out from there. And if you're trying to drift that point and the hole behind that point, every 6 drifts, you're going to hit it once. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's not necessarily you're bad at boat positioning or whatever. It's just the way it works.
Greg Berger said, Dustin, I have never used electronics. If I find an eddy, I fish them and clean up on the fish.
There you
go. So really quick, let me share this out. This is the tournament for the 19th. It starts at 7 p.m. for the Live Fishing Tournament League. It will be on Fields to Water. So Chad's channel, Bubbles, Brian B. Catfishing, and Palmetto Cats.
I see. So, they have spots open. I might be fishing.
We have a few alternates, I think.
Might be fishing it too.
So Austin, Freddie, probably Nina, Brandon and Bobcat, myself, and a couple other people will all be on Brian's channel. So I'm looking forward to this one. This is going to be, it's a walk the plank. It's a little bit different. 4 hours you have to catch a qualifying fish, and that's 2 pounds or bigger. And then whoever qualifies, so if you haven't caught a 2-pound fish by 11 o'clock, so you got 4 hours. If you haven't caught a 2-pound fish by then you walk the plank and you're out of the tournament. Yep. Then you have 2 hours after that to catch another qualifying fish, and then same goes for that. If you don't catch the fish within those 2 hours, you walk the plank. I think 2 more hours after that. I think at that last is if people are still in, I think it's 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning. If we still have multiple teams in, it's going to be a sudden death. Whoever catches the next fish wins. So that's going to be an interesting tournament. I know we fished it last year, and that was fun. So I'm looking forward to this year again. There's a lot of people in it. So if you want to catch that, just remember it's next Saturday, the 19th. Starting at 7 p.m. And as I always do, and will always do, don't forget to go check out F.O.A.customsandgear.com. You can use, like I said, you can use TSW10, you can use Yak 10, you can use Fever 10, you can use FTW 10. I think Bubble BBC 10. That stands for Brian B. Catfishing. So go check them out. Freddie and Nina are awesome. And yes, they have fantastic equipment, top-notch people, top-notch customer service, top-notch quality. So go check them out and get yourself some fishing gear. And they sell everything. I always say they sell everything you need except for the reels. And if you need a reel, go to River Cats Tackle, and you can get yourself an Ancient Mariner reel from them. You can use 92210, Swain 10, and it might even be Creo 10. But go check them out. Get yourself some Ancient Mariner gear. I will always use nothing but Ancient Mariner reels on all of my rods. So you can't beat the quality. You can't beat the warranty. So go check them out. And Creo, one more comment, said, boat control is the hardest thing to get proficient with, but it's the most important.
For sure. And if I may, I'll add that if you guys do have any more questions about bumping, you're more than welcome to message me. I know Bob will always answer too. So you can message me at WE-AX Fishing Adventures, or by my actual personal Facebook, however you want to do it. Or you can message Bob at Bobcat Outdoors. We're more than happy to help. I'm sure Creo would too. I know for sure Bob will, and I know I will. Mr. Gimpy, if you message me on Facebook, I'm more than happy to give you some spots. But generally speaking, right now it's going to be on the river. Seems to be the best spots bank wise for catfishing currently. They are still finishing up the spawn. There's been some big fish getting caught below the dam and just downriver. So yeah. I will also say, Dustin, thank you for having me up here tonight. I do appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you respect my opinion enough to be up here to talk about this.
Absolutely.
and it's been fun.
All right, Creole said definitely can message him anytime. Chris from Catfish with Us said the new Ancient Mariner Gem series will be amazing. Yeah, I talked to Captain Spirit about that a couple days ago. I told him I can't wait to get my hands on one of those. So, yeah, but thank you again, Yak. Thank you for coming up tonight and helping out with the show. Creole, Bobcat, and everybody else that gave advice and talking points in the chat. Really appreciate you. This show would not be. Oh,
I got one more thing. I forgot. We have a show Saturday.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna be doing. I know we're gonna be doing a bump of episode eventually. It won't be the next one. Dustin's not in a good spot for that yet, but it's definitely gonna be one of the ones coming up. So if you do want to see that in action, make sure you tune in on either Team Snaggin Whiskers or on Yak's Fishing Adventures to catch that episode. But every Saturday between now and probably October-ish, when it depends on the fishing and weather and whatnot. The plan is to do a show from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. I know it's a little bit late for some people, but you can always catch the replay. But we're trying these techniques, explaining some stuff. This next episode is actually a viewer's choice episode. We do have some polls out on Facebook to get some ideas. So far, the two that are sticking out the most is a light tackle episode and a episode that's talking about reading the river and boat gear storage. So it's definitely something out there.
I've got another thought I'm going to run by you, but
sure.
But we'll talk backstage. But on that, but yes, absolutely. Whisker's Gone Wild. It's going to be on both of our channels, 10 p.m. Saturday evenings. We are going to be out most evenings, not every Saturday, mainly because other things come up, like we took off last week for the holiday. So, but yeah, for majority of the Saturdays, 10 p.m., 2 a.m., we will be out doing, trying to do something new every week. It's almost impossible to do something new every week, if especially going that long. So, but there may be a new, a new twist to whatever we do. Say if we're anchoring, we may fish for a specific. We may be targeting a specific species while anchoring.
Sure.
So we'll see what happens, but. Hope y'all catch that Saturday night. And is there anything else you want to say?
Get out there and catch some fish, man. You can't catch fish from the couch.
Absolutely. So. But thank you all so much for coming in. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget the what was I going to say? Oh, well. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. And we look forward to seeing y'all Saturday night and then right back here on Team Snaggin Whiskers for Snaggin Night Live next Thursday evening. Hope you have a great weekend. Thank y'all so much.